I've been waiting 3 years to write this post, not because I needed to heal or process or whatever therapist language people throw around. I waited because I was working on something and now it's done, and I need somewhere to put all of this before I lose my mind. Let me back up. I'm 34. I was married to Hannah for 6 years. We met through her brother Dominic, who I'd been friends with since college. Dominic introduced us at his birthday party in 2015. We dated for 2 years, got married in 2017. Her family accepted me right away, or at least I thought they did. Her parents, her sister Rachel, her extended family. I thought I was in. I thought these people actually liked me. Turns out they tolerated me because I was useful. I had a good job in logistics. I helped Dominic get a position at my company. I co-signed on her parents' car when their credit was garbage. I paid for half of Rachel's wedding when her husband Zachary conveniently forgot his checkbook for 6 months. I was the family ATM with a pulse, and I was too stupid to see it. The affair started in early 2022. My cousin Jackson had moved back to our city after a failed business venture in Texas. He needed a place to crash, and because I'm apparently the designated helper for everyone in both families, I let him stay in our guest room for what was supposed to be 3 weeks. It turned into 2 months. And somewhere in those 2 months, while I was working 50-hour weeks and coming home exhausted, Hannah and Jackson decided they were soulmates. I didn't find out through some dramatic phone discovery or walking in on them. Nothing that clean. It was slower than that. Hannah started being weird about her schedule. She'd say she was going to yoga but come home without her mat. She'd take calls in the garage. She stopped wanting to do anything together on weekends because she was always tired. I noticed Jackson had stopped being around when I was home, but Hannah mentioned he was helping her mom with yard work, helping Rachel move furniture. Always somewhere helpful and convenient. I'm not an idiot. I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. The confirmation came in March 2022. Hannah left her iPad on the kitchen counter, still logged into her iMessages. I wasn't snooping. I picked it up to move it and the screen lit up with a thread from Jackson. The preview showed enough. I scrolled through 3 months of messages, explicit photos, plans to meet at hotels, conversations about ME, about how I was boring and predictable and how Jackson made her feel alive. There was one message where Jackson wrote that I was basically a paycheck with legs, and Hannah responded with laughing emojis. 3 years together, and that's what I was. A paycheck with legs. Here's the thing that still makes me want to put my fist through drywall. When I confronted them, they didn't even try to deny it. Hannah looked at me like I was inconveniencing her. She told me the marriage had been dead for years, and I was too dense to notice. Jackson stood there with this smug look and said he was sorry it happened this way, but he wasn't sorry it happened. And then Hannah said she wanted a divorce, and she was moving out that weekend. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. The worst part was her family. Hannah told them her version first. I don't know exactly what she said, but within 48 hours I was getting texts and calls from every member of her family telling me what a piece of garbage I was. Her mother Megan called me and said I was half a man who couldn't satisfy her daughter. Those exact words. Half a man. She said no wonder Hannah went looking elsewhere when she was married to someone with no passion and no backbone. Her father sent me a voice message saying I was an embarrassment to his family, and he always knew I wasn't good enough for his daughter. He said he regretted ever letting me into their home. And Rachel. Rachel sent me photos of Jackson and Hannah together, candid shots of them smiling and holding hands, with the caption, "This is what a real husband looks like." She sent me 5 different photos over 2 days, each one with some variation of the same message, like she wanted to make sure I understood exactly how pathetic I was. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Something clicked in me during those 48 hours. I was getting bombarded with the most vicious messages I've ever received from people who I had helped, people whose car I co-signed, whose wedding I partially paid for, who I got jobs and gave loans to. And they were treating me like I was the villain because Hannah decided to sleep with my cousin. So I started saving everything. Every text, every voicemail, every photo Rachel sent. I downloaded it all, backed it up to 3 different places. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I wasn't going to let this slide. These people had just handed me ammunition, and they were too arrogant to realize it. The divorce went through in August 2022. Hannah got almost nothing because she was the one who cheated, and we had a prenup she'd signed without reading carefully. She and Jackson moved in together the same month. Her family stopped contacting me once the divorce was final, I assume, because they'd done enough damage and could move on. But I didn't move on. For 3 years, I thought about those messages every single day. Half a man. An embarrassment. This is what a real husband looks like. I built my career up, got promoted twice, moved to a better apartment, started working out, not to move on, to be ready. Because I knew eventually they would need something from me again. They always do. 2 months ago, it finally happened. Dominic called me for the first time in 3 years because his family was in serious trouble and he needed help. And when he explained the situation, I realized I had exactly what I needed to make every single one of them regret ever sending me those messages. I told him I'd think about it. Then I hung up and spent 2 months working on something in complete silence. If you want to know what happened next, I'll post an update. Because what I did to that family over the last 8 weeks is something I need to get off my chest, and this post is already longer than I planned. Yo, this man was operating as a full-service family support center for these people. Co-signing cars, paying for weddings, getting people jobs. Bro was running a nonprofit organization disguised as a marriage and didn't even get a tax write-off for it. And Rachel, sending 5 photos over 2 days with custom captions like she was running a harassment Instagram account. That's not even impulsive cruelty anymore. That's a content calendar. She woke up day 2 and thought, you know what? Yesterday's photo wasn't enough. Let me really drive this home. That takes effort. That takes sitting down, choosing which photo hurts the most, typing out a caption, and hitting send 5 times. But here's what gets me. These people watched this man write checks for their family for 6 years and then turned on him in 48 hours like he was the enemy all along. They didn't even hesitate. That tells you everything you need to know. They were never grateful. They were just waiting. Every favor he did, every dollar he spent, they filed it under things we deserve and kept it moving. And this man? He didn't spiral. He didn't beg. He started a filing system. 3 backup locations. That's not rage, that's infrastructure. He built the administrative foundation for revenge while they were busy celebrating. They thought they won. He was just getting organized. Update 1. Alright, so a lot of you asked what kind of trouble Dominic was talking about when he called me. I'm going to explain everything, but first I need to give some context about what happened in those 3 years of silence, because it directly connects to why they suddenly needed me of all people. Remember how I mentioned I co-signed on Hannah's parents' car back when we were married? Well, here's the fun thing about co-signing that nobody tells you. You're on the hook until that loan is paid off or they refinance. And guess what Hannah's family never bothered to do? Refinance. For 3 years, my name sat on that loan while I had zero contact with these people. I assumed they were making payments because I wasn't getting any alerts. I was wrong. When Dominic called me 2 months ago, he started with small talk like nothing had happened, asked how I was doing, mentioned he saw I got promoted, said it was good to hear my voice. I let him talk. I didn't say much, I just waited. And eventually, he got to the point. Their parents were 4 months behind on the car payments. The finance company had started collections proceedings. They'd already sent letters to Megan and her father, but they'd also sent letters to ME because my name is still on the loan. This was the first I was hearing about it because the letters went to my old address, the house Hannah and I used to share, which she was apparently still living in with Jackson. Dominic said his mom finally told him about the situation because they were about to lose the car and they needed someone to help negotiate with the lender. And since my credit was also on the line, he figured I'd want to help fix it. I want you to understand something. Dominic is not a bad guy. He's weak, and he chose his family over our friendship when everything went down. But he's not cruel like the others. He never sent me nasty messages. He just went silent. So when he called, he genuinely thought he was doing me a favor by letting me know my credit was being affected. He thought I'd be grateful for the heads up. He had no idea I'd been waiting for exactly this moment. I told Dominic I needed a few days to think about things. He said sure, he understood. And then he mentioned something that changed everything. He said things had gotten rough for everyone lately. Not just the car situation. Jackson's old business debts from Texas had caught up with him. Some creditor had tracked him down and was garnishing his wages. He and Hannah were fighting constantly about money. Rachel and Zachary were trying to buy a house but kept getting denied because Zachary's credit was trashed from some old medical bills. And Dominic himself was worried about layoffs at the company because there was restructuring happening. The company, my company, where I got Dominic hired 7 years ago, and where I was now 2 levels above him in management. I hung up with Dominic and spent the rest of that night going through every single piece of evidence I'd saved. Every voicemail, every text, every photo Rachel sent me, with her cute little captions. I read through Hannah's parents' messages calling me half a man, an embarrassment. I listened to her father's voice message 3 times. And then I opened a new document and started making a plan. Here's what Dominic didn't know. The restructuring he was worried about? I was on the committee making recommendations. I wasn't the final decision maker, but I had significant input on which positions were essential and which were redundant. Dominic's position was secure, actually. He's a decent worker, but he didn't know that, and his fear was useful to me. Here's what else Dominic didn't know. The finance company wasn't just going to hurt my credit. They were going to come after me for the remaining balance if the car got repossessed. We're talking about $18,000. Money I would legally owe because I was stupid enough to co-sign for people who spent 3 years calling me worthless. So if I wanted to protect myself, I had two options. I could pay off their debt and eat the cost, or I could demand they refinance immediately and get my name off that loan. I chose option 3. I would help them, but only on my terms. And my terms were going to cost them a lot more than money. I called Dominic back 3 days later. I told him I'd looked into the car situation and I was willing to help prevent repossession, but I needed to have a conversation with his entire family first, face to face, all of them, including Hannah and Jackson. Dominic went quiet for a long time. He asked why I needed to see everyone. I said because I wasn't going to negotiate through intermediaries and I wasn't going to help people who couldn't look me in the eye and explain why I should. Dominic said he didn't think Hannah and Jackson would agree to that. I said then I guess their car gets repossessed and my lawyer handles the rest. He asked what lawyer. I said the one I was going to hire to sue his parents for the damage to my credit and the remaining loan balance I'd be stuck with. I told him I had documentation of every payment I'd made toward that car during my marriage, and I'd be seeking full reimbursement plus damages. I wasn't actually planning to sue. Not yet, anyway. But Dominic didn't know that, and fear is a powerful motivator. It took a week of back and forth. Dominic would call me saying his parents were willing to meet, but Hannah was refusing. I'd say then no deal. Then he'd call saying Hannah agreed, but Jackson wouldn't come. I'd say then no deal. I held firm every single time. Either I got what I wanted or I walked away and let the whole thing burn. They finally agreed. All of them. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon at Dominic's apartment because it was neutral ground. The whole family would be there. Hannah's parents, Rachel and Zachary, Hannah and Jackson, and me. I showed up 15 minutes early with a folder containing copies of every horrible message they'd ever sent me. I sat in my car and reviewed my plan one more time. I wasn't there to make peace. I wasn't there to get closure. I was there to look every single one of them in the eye and make them understand that the man they dismissed as half a man was about to become the most important person in their lives. When I walked into that apartment and saw all of them sitting there, Hannah wouldn't even look at me. Jackson had this uncomfortable look like he wanted to be anywhere else. Her parents sat on the couch looking older than I remembered. Rachel was on her phone. Zachary was staring at the floor. Dominic offered me a drink and I said no. I sat down across from all of them, and I said we were going to have a conversation about the car, about what they'd done to me, and about what was going to happen next. I said if anyone tried to leave before I was finished, I would walk out and they could deal with the finance company on their own. Then I opened my folder. And that's when things got really interesting. Because what I had in that folder wasn't just their old messages. I'd spent the last week doing research, and I'd found out something about Jackson that even Hannah didn't know. I'll tell you what it was in the next update because this one is already way too long and I need to figure out how much I can legally share. The audacity of Dominic calling, like they're old buddies catching up. Hey man, saw you got promoted. Good to hear your voice. Brother, you went radio silent for 3 years. While your family carpet bombed this man's inbox with psychological warfare. You don't get to small talk your way back in like you forgot to return a borrowed lawnmower. And here's what's beautiful about this whole setup. They genuinely thought they were doing him a favor. Hey, your credit's getting destroyed because of our mess. Figured you'd want to help fix it. The entitlement is generational at this point. They've been treating this man like a utility company for so long that even when they're asking for help, they frame it like they're the ones being generous. But every single person in that family is crumbling at the exact same time. Jackson's wages getting garnished. Rachel can't buy a house. Dominic's scared about his job. The parents losing their car. It's like the universe looked at its calendar and said, you know what? Everyone's due at once. And this man? He's sitting there with a folder, printed copies, organized evidence. 3 years of patience paying off. They walked into that apartment thinking they were about to negotiate with someone who needed them. They had no idea they were walking into a performance review for their entire lives. Update 2. All right. So a lot of you wanted to know what I found out about Jackson. I'm getting there, but first I need to describe what happened in that room. When I opened my folder, I pulled out printed copies of every text Rachel had sent me. 5 photos of Hannah and Jackson with those captions. This is what a real husband looks like. I placed them on the coffee table facing everyone. Rachel's face went red. She tried saying that was 3 years ago. I told her to pick up the photos and read the captions out loud. She refused. Zachary called it ridiculous. I asked if adults send harassment to family members during a divorce. He went quiet. I made Rachel read all 5 captions. Then I played the voicemail from her father calling me an embarrassment. When it finished, I asked him if he still felt that way. He stared at his hands. Hannah said I was being cruel just to humiliate everyone. I told her she was right. That's exactly what they did to me. I asked how it felt. Then, I got to Jackson. Dominic had mentioned Jackson's business debts from Texas. Wage garnishment. But he didn't know details. So I did research. Jackson and I share family, including an aunt in Houston who knows everyone's business. I called her and asked about Jackson's time in Texas. Jackson's failed business wasn't just a failed business. He had a partner, and when things went bad, Jackson bailed, left his partner holding most of the debt and skipped town. The partner sued. The wage garnishment was court-ordered restitution. Jackson owes this man over $40,000. But Jackson told Hannah's family a different story. He said his business failed because of the economy, that his partner messed things up and was unfairly coming after him. He painted himself as a victim, and they believed him because he was the real husband. I asked Jackson if he wanted to tell everyone the truth or if I should. He said I didn't know what I was talking about. I said I had screenshots of court documents showing he was found liable for breach of their partnership agreement. Jackson tried spinning it. Hannah looked at him differently. She asked if he really abandoned his partner. Jackson called it a strategic decision. Hannah asked why he'd told her it was the partner's fault. Her father asked how much Jackson actually owed. Jackson said it wasn't relevant. Her father said it absolutely was, because they'd given Jackson money over the past 3 years based on his victim story. They'd covered his bills. And now they were learning he'd lied about why he was broke. Rachel asked how much their parents had given Jackson. Megan said that wasn't anyone's business. Rachel said it was her business because she and Zachary kept getting denied for their mortgage while their parents handed money to Jackson based on lies. The family started fracturing right there. Hannah asked why I was doing this. I said I was doing exactly what they did to me, exposing truth, making sure nobody could hide behind comfortable lies. Then I explained the car situation. Their missed payments triggered collection actions against me. My credit was damaged by people who spent 3 years calling me worthless. I had 2 choices. Let the car get repossessed and sue their parents for the remaining balance plus damages. Or they could refinance immediately and get my name off the loan. Megan cried. She said they couldn't refinance with their credit destroyed. I said that sounded like a personal problem. Her husband called me vindictive. I said I was practical. I'd spent 6 years helping their family, and they repaid me by calling me half a man. Dominic asked if we could work something out. I said maybe, but the negotiation would involve everyone and require things they wouldn't like. Then I mentioned I knew he was worried about layoffs. His face changed. I told him I was on the restructuring committee. His position was secure, but I wanted him to understand something. His family treated me like garbage, and he said nothing in my defense. Now his job, his parents' car, his sister's housing, and Jackson's life were all connected to decisions I could influence. I gave them 1 week to propose how they'd make this right. Not apologies, actions. Real accountability from everyone who attacked me, and a plan for the car loan. Then I left. That was 5 weeks ago. What happened after that meeting is why their family group chat exploded with panic. Making Rachel read her own captions out loud in front of the whole family is cinema. That's not petty. That's accountability with a live studio audience. 3 years ago, she was so confident in that cruelty, hitting send 5 separate times like she was on a mission. Now she can't even say the words in a room full of people who were supposed to be on her side. And I love how Hannah tried pulling the "you're being cruel" card. Ma'am, you left your husband for his cousin, and then let your whole family spend a week psychologically demolishing him while you watched. You don't get to define cruelty anymore. You retired from that conversation. But the family turning on itself? That's the part nobody planned for. Rachel finding out her parents have been funding Jackson while she can't buy a house. The dad realizing he gave money to a con artist who was sleeping with his daughter. Everyone discovering the real husband was actually just a guy who's professionally good at running away from consequences. This man didn't even have to destroy them. He just turned on the lights and let them see each other clearly for the first time. The lies they told each other did the rest. He walked in with a folder and walked out while the whole family imploded behind him like a slow-motion action movie explosion. Final update. So here's what happened after I left that meeting. The week I gave them to come up with a proposal came and went. Nobody contacted me. I figured they were either too proud or too disorganized to get their act together. Turns out it was both, plus something else. The meeting had triggered a civil war inside their family. Dominic finally texted me on day 9 asking for more time. He said Rachel wasn't speaking to their parents because of the money they'd given Jackson. Hannah had moved out of the house she shared with Jackson and was staying with a friend. Their father had a health scare from stress and spent 2 days in the hospital getting checked out. Everything was falling apart and nobody could agree on anything. I told Dominic they had 3 more days. Then I was contacting my lawyer about the car loan. On day 12, Dominic sent me a group text that included everyone. He tried to organize a family response. He proposed that everyone chip in to cover the car payments, get current on the loan, and then figure out refinancing later. Rachel immediately responded saying she wasn't paying a cent when their parents had wasted money on Jackson for 3 years. Zachary backed her up. Their father responded saying Rachel was being selfish when the whole family was in crisis. Rachel said he was the selfish one for prioritizing his affair-having daughter's boyfriend over his other children. This was all happening in a group text that included me. They forgot I was on the thread, or they didn't care anymore. I sat back and watched them tear each other apart for 2 hours. Then Hannah finally responded. She said she was done. Done with Jackson, done with her family defending him, done with all of it. She said Jackson had been lying to her about money for their entire relationship. She'd found out he'd been hiding the extent of his debt, that he owed even more than what I'd revealed at the meeting. She said she felt like an idiot for leaving me for someone who turned out to be exactly what her family had called me, a fraud, an embarrassment. Jackson responded, telling Hannah she was overreacting and they could work through this. Hannah told him to stop texting her. Rachel jumped in saying she'd warned Hannah about rushing into things with Jackson. Their mother told everyone to stop fighting. Their father said nothing. And that's when I finally responded to the group text. I wrote that I'd been watching their conversation and I wanted to make a few things clear. I said I was done waiting for a proposal. I said I'd already contacted a lawyer about the car loan and would be pursuing full reimbursement for any damages to my credit. I said if their parents wanted to avoid being sued, they had until Friday to find a co-signer with better credit to replace me on the loan. I said I didn't care how they did it or who they asked. I just wanted my name off their debt. Then I addressed each of them individually. I told Rachel I hoped every time she looked at a house she couldn't afford, she'd remember the photos she sent me. I told Zachary that the money his in-laws wasted on Jackson could have been his down payment. I told their parents that the man they called half a man was the only one who'd ever actually helped them, and they'd thrown that away to defend a liar. I told Dominic I was recommending his position stay secure during restructuring, not because of our friendship, but because he was competent at his job, and I wanted him to know the difference between being valued for merit and being valued for convenience. Then I told Hannah something I'd wanted to say for 3 years. I said she'd traded a boring, predictable husband for someone who made her feel alive, and now she was single, broke, and watching her family destroy itself. I said I hoped the excitement was worth it. I left the group text after that. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Dominic kept me updated even though I told him he didn't need to. He said his parents managed to get his uncle to co-sign on a new loan, but only after his father had to beg on the phone for an hour. The refinance went through last week. My name is officially off their debt. Rachel and Zachary are still fighting with her parents about money and aren't speaking to them. Hannah moved into a small apartment by herself. Jackson is back living with relatives and still dealing with his wage garnishment. And here's the part about the family group chat exploding. Remember how I saved every message, every voicemail, every photo they sent me? I told them at the meeting that I had all of it, but I didn't tell them what I planned to do with it. Last week, after the refinance went through and my credit was protected, I sent copies to the one person they'd all been hiding their behavior from, their grandmother, Megan's mother, the matriarch of their family who they all pretend to be perfect around. I included a note explaining that I thought she should know how her grandchildren and children treated their former son-in-law during his divorce. I included the voicemails, the texts, the photos with Rachel's captions. The family group chat exploded within hours. Voice messages of pure panic, Megan crying about how her mother wouldn't stop calling, Rachel screaming about how I'd ruined her reputation, their father demanding to know how I got his mother-in-law's address, Hannah saying she couldn't believe I'd gone that far. Their grandmother apparently told them all she was ashamed of them. She said she'd raised her family better than that. She said she was reconsidering who was included in her will. So that's where we are now. Their family is fractured. Their grandmother is furious. Their relationships are damaged. And me? I'm sitting in my apartment with zero debt, strong credit, a good job, and the satisfaction of knowing that every single person who called me half a man is now dealing with consequences they created. They handed me everything I needed. I just waited for the right moment to use it. For anyone wondering if I feel guilty, I don't. They had 3 years to apologize. Instead, they ignored me until they needed something. That was their choice. This was mine. That's my story. Thanks for reading. The grandmother play is legendary. After everything, the meeting, the family civil war, the group chat meltdown, getting his name off the loan, He still had one more card to play, and he waited until he was completely protected before he played it. This man sent a care package to Grandma, printed voicemails, screenshots, Rachel's little photo gallery project. Imagine being 80 years old, opening your mail, and finding out your whole family has been running a cyberbullying campaign against the guy who paid for half your granddaughter's wedding. And these people had 3 years to apologize. 3 years of silence where any one of them could have sent a text saying, "Hey, we went too far." Instead, they ghosted him until their car was about to get repossessed and suddenly remembered he existed. They treated remorse like it had an expiration date and then got surprised when the receipt came due. Verdict? Listen, some people are going to say he went too far. Some people are going to say holding on to screenshots for 3 years is unhealthy. But you know what's also unhealthy? Sending someone 5 photos of your sister with their cousin with captions designed to make them feel worthless. Calling someone half a man while cashing checks they co-signed for. Treating kindness like a subscription service that comes with unlimited disrespect. This man didn't do anything illegal. He didn't lie. He didn't make anything up. He just showed people what they did. If showing the truth destroys your reputation, maybe the problem isn't the person showing it. Maybe the problem is what you did. They created a monster by treating a good man like he was disposable. And that monster kept excellent records. NTA. And honestly, this should be taught in business schools as a case study in patience, documentation, and knowing when to deploy your assets.